What's up, pals? My name is Hutch. I make videos and put them on the internet, and this is my spoiler-free Starfield review. I want to start this video off by talking about the bad news, and there is some bad news. So let's get through those first, and then we're gonna cover the good stuff. The most important flaw that I think this game has is performance. Now, I think this is the feature that most people were curious about leading up to the full release of this game. I saw a lot of questions in the subreddit and in YouTube comments from people that were asking or openly wondering, how is this game going to hold up on a decent PC? How is this game going to hold up on console? I can't speak to Xbox because I played on PC, but my experience on PC was, okay. First and foremost, there is no DLSS option. So if you have an NVIDIA card, you can't use that upscaling technology that has been such a boon to recent games. So for example, with Cyberpunk 2077, I can play that game in fully maxed out settings with ray tracing on, and with frame generation, because I have a 4090, I can regularly get 90, oftentimes 100 plus frames the whole time. That is not what my experience was with Starfield. First of all, as I already mentioned, I have a 4090 and I have a 7950X and 32 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM. My PC is a monster. With Starfield, my experience was closer to 40 to 60 frames was about the average in certain locations that are more confined, like the inside of buildings or in a mine or something like that. You could see performance jump up to 90, 100 frames, maybe very briefly. But for the most part, yeah, I would say I was hovering between 40 and 60 frames. That is a big problem for someone like me. I like to have just the smoothest, prettiest experience. That's part of the reason that I enjoy games as much as I do. That being said, there are going to be some mods, as far as I understand, that will add DLSS to the game, but it's not going to be natively supported as far as I know. Now, by the time you're watching this review, maybe there will have been an update and they will have added DLSS. I really don't know, but for right now, it's not there and the performance is not great. So especially when you go to a big city like New Atlantis, you're going to see a huge hit for performance. So that's the biggest flaw with this game, and I think that the performance is going to be something that people are talking about, especially in the first couple weeks when this game launches. I do think that this is going to be a hot topic. And as far as I understand, it's locked at 30 frames on console. So that's the big complaint. The minor complaints that I have are as follows. So some of the characters are animated, I think, really well. When they speak, it looks fine. About what you would expect for a game of this scale. But yeah, I mean, I would say a lot of the characters look pretty good. That being said, a lot of the non-playable characters, the characters that you don't really meaningfully interact with, they can look kind of goofy. In summary, some of the animations are done really well, and some of them are done it's not like an ugly game. It doesn't totally distract you enough to take away from your experience, or at least that was the case for me. But yeah, there's a little bit of a mismatch there. I will say some of the game systems in this game are not intuitive at all, and I don't think the game does a good enough job of explaining certain systems. So the fabricator in the outpost building section of the game is very confusing. It turns out that you need to build a crate and then create an output link from the crate to the fabricator, and you got to make sure that the materials that you need for the fabricator are in the crate. I don't think it does a good enough job explaining some of these things. But then again, this is sort of I think a feature with a lot of Bethesda games. You don't necessarily hold your hand as much as other games, and so for me, I'm gonna have to rely on a lot of YouTubers to figure out a lot of the systems in this game, because I was pretty confused at times. I would say the gear is not super exciting. So there are, common items and rare items and legendary and epic items, but it all kind of felt the same to me. I didn't get really all that excited when I got a gold piece of armor or weapon. I mean, there are certain traits that each piece of gear has, but it doesn't seem like there are that many traits. It seems like maybe there's 10 to 20 that you can expect to find, and they didn't necessarily change things all that much. So if you're going into this game looking for an experience, a looter experience that more closely resembles Destiny, you're not going to be happy with it. But I would say it doesn't necessarily matter that much in this game. For some reason, they don't have a regional map. So when you go to New Atlantis, for example, or Aquila or Neon, you know, there's certain shops that you're going to want to remember where they are, because you know, I bought a lot of items in this game. I bought resources, I bought ammo, I bought weapons, and you know, listen, take it for a grain of salt, because it's very possible that I'm an idiot and they did have some kind of a regional map and I just didn't find it. But I don't think there's one in the game. So when you go to all these new cities, and there's like, I don't know, 8 to 15 like major cities, you're gonna have to just keep track of where these things are in your head. Maybe you're used to that with the way that you play games. I'm a bit of a dummy and I need regional maps, and so that was challenging at times. So for example, I bought an apartment in New Atlantis, and sort of like the poorer area of New Atlantis. I spent tens of thousands of credits on it. I went to it one time. It was totally barren, and you couldn't, as far as I understand, add anything to it. So that was kind of weird. I didn't really understand what the point of the apartment was. Now, again, it's possible that there's a system in place that I wasn't aware of, so there's that. But I couldn't find my apartment after I bought it. I went somewhere else, and then when I went to go and like try to find where my apartment was, I literally couldn't find it. And so I looked for it for like 30 minutes, and then I just gave up, and I've never been back to that apartment. So there's that. There are some bugs, and there were a couple bugs that were a little scary. And so, for example, towards the end of the game, I'm finishing up the main quest, and the quest just would not progress. And I tried reloading a couple times. It still didn't work. It finally worked on like the third reload, but for a minute there, I was like, I was nervous because I really wanted to finish this quest, the main story. I wanted to see where it goes. I wanted to see what happened with New Game Plus, and I thought for a second maybe it wasn't going to let me do it, but it eventually worked. And you know, the fact that there's bugs should be expected with a game of this size, but for the most part, you know, it was honestly like very polished. Okay, so let's get into the good stuff, because I think the good stuff is more important. I mean, the performance stuff is pretty important, I think, but honestly, not so much. Because, and I was trying to think of like a single word that I could use to describe my experience with this game, and the word that kept popping into my brain was astonishing. This game is astonishing. Like, the audacity of this game to be this good. I mean, I just like, how dare you is sort of what I was feeling on the inside. I think it's remarkable. I'm very glad that they delayed the game to make sure it was polished and make sure it wasn't broken. If it would have dropped and it was a buggy mess, sort of like, I don't know, Cyberpunk or a game situation like that, it would have been massively disappointing. But for the most part, there weren't a lot of bugs at all. The game was very polished, and the experience that I had playing this game is unlike any experience that I've had with any game ever. The anticipation that I felt for Starfield was on the level of the anticipation and excitement and almost like anxiety that I felt when I was a kid, like 8 years old. It's December 10th. There's 2 more weeks until Christmas, and I'm just so excited thinking about the possible gifts that I'm gonna get from my parents and from Santa. That's like the level of internal hype that I had going into this game, and I have to tell you, this game exceeded what I had in mind in terms of expectations. It more than delivered on the hype. It delivered on the hype, and then it took it like 10 steps further. Like I said, it's astonishing. I think if you click with this game, you could very easily spend hundreds of hours on a single character, and then hundreds more on a New Game Plus character. I don't have any doubt in my mind that there are going to be a lot of people that have 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 hours played in this game easily. Their POI generating system, I think, works really well. I've heard that there's a limit to how far you can walk on foot on a planet before you reach the end of your tile, and then it tells you to get back in your ship and land somewhere else. I didn't experience that a single time, and I did a lot of exploring in this game. So the way that it works is that the planets themselves, I think everyone is going to have the exact same planet. So my Mars is going to look exactly like your Mars. My Vega is going to look exactly like your Vega. But when I choose a landing spot and I drop down into the map or into the planet or moon or whatever, it'll generate these POIs randomly. That is going to be procedurally generated. And so your experience with what POIs show up in certain regions of Mars or whatever is going to be different from mine. And what it does is that it gives you this feeling that you're involved with this world. It gives you things to do. It gives you places to loot. It gives you all kinds of stuff to do. And so even though much of this galaxy is barren, you still feel like you're actively participating in a universe. And so, you know, you don't really feel that sense of desolation, of barrenness. That was something that I was a little concerned with too going into the game, was how are they going to pull off a game of this scale? But I have to say that they implemented their system really well, and I felt I was not bored a single time playing this game. I think this is by far Bethesda's best shot at combat. So Skyrim is like one of my favorite games of all time. I don't know, I would guess like 250 hours played with that game, but the combat is like, you know, it's okay, you know. And Fallout 4, I don't love the VAT system, and it just kind of felt clunky to me. This is like by far, yeah, like I said, by far their best shot at combat. It's not like as smooth as some of these other AAA titles that you're gonna find, like let's say Horizon Forbidden West, but it's definitely their best take at combat. The gunplay felt nice. Game felt really good with the controller. A lot of people are going to play this game on a mouse and keyboard, but for a single player game that I'm going to dump dozens or hundreds of hours into, I just prefer to kick back and use a controller. And so, yeah, the controller felt good. It felt nice, felt fluid. It would feel better if the frames per second were higher, but it is what it is. As I mentioned before, honestly, there are not that many bugs that I encountered. There was a particularly funny bug that removed everyone's hair when something would happen. So I would be playing, walking around some city, and then I look around and then I notice like literally everybody's bald. But they just rolled out a patch, I think yesterday or the day before, that fixed it. And so as I put 10 to 15 hours since the patch, and I haven't seen that bug pop up once. So I don't think you guys are gonna have to worry about that one. It's very impressive that a game this big doesn't have that many bugs, and none of the bugs that I encountered were game breaking. Most of the time they were kind of funny, which is sort of part of the charm with Bethesda games in my experience. And so it just kind of comes with the territory. But yeah, nothing game breaking. And there's 1,000 planets and moons that you can explore. This is a whole universe. There's 100 plus systems that you can jump to. And even with all that, I had one crash in 90 to 100 hours of playing. The game crashed one singular time, which is wild. The outpost building has some really cool features. You can especially if you do more research, the game has a research system. And so if you want to build better mods for your guns, build better mods for your armor, or learn how to build better power generating systems in the outpost building section, then you have to do some research, which requires materials and resources. But once you do, you unlock a lot of different ways that you can sort of like spruce up your hab and make it look like a personal dwelling for you specifically. And there's a lot of customization there, and I don't even feel like I scratched the surface of the things that you can do with outpost building, and I spent probably like 10 to 15 hours devoted to it. And yeah, so if you're into a more sort of like Minecrafty experience, this game will give you the tools to do a lot of like really creative stuff. I think the shipbuilding stuff just went way over my head, so I didn't even try to do much with customizing my ship. I'm not familiar with ship technology, and so I didn't want to mess my ships up and then permanently like alter them. But there were a ton of customization options there for you to explore, and I suspect once the game's been out for a couple of weeks and we get some YouTubers that sort of better explain how the shipbuilding system works, then I have no doubt that I'll jump back into it then. I didn't want to take the risk and like delete some part of my ship and then it's like broken, you know. Their take on New Game Plus I think is really good, very unique, and I don't want to get into any of that specifically because I don't want to spoil anything. So like if I were you guys, I might just plow through the main quest for your first playthrough, start New Game Plus, and then only after that start like really kind of getting into the side quest stuff. And it might be worth it to do that. I mean, I've heard Todd Howard say that the main quest alone is going to take 40 to 50 hours, but in my experience, I don't think that's true. Like, I think if you really plowed through the main quest without getting sidetracked at all, you could probably get it done in 10 to 15 hours. That being said, when I did my first playthrough, by the time I hit New Game Plus, it was about 50 hours. And that was with me getting sidetracked a lot. That was with me finding some beautiful planet and then roaming that planet and just kind of looking at the creatures or whatever. That was me doing outpost building stuff. That was me doing side quests. That was me just doing all kinds of things. And so, yeah, like I said, I think you could probably plow through the main campaign in like 10 to 15 hours. And there are certain systems that emerge kind of midway through the campaign. So you're gonna want these systems. Like, yeah, I mean, like, as I said, I think it might be a good idea to just plow through, but anyways, just play the game however you want. There's just like limitless options for how you want to approach Starfield. So there's a lot that I want to say about this game, but I want this video to be somewhat concise. So I'm gonna end my discussion of this game, my review of this game, by talking about what I think is the game's biggest strength, which is the exploration. I am a guy that really values exploration in games. I think Red Dead 2 would be like my benchmark. When you look at a game like that, everywhere you go, there's something interesting. There might be a rare horse, there might be some really funny side character, there might be some incredibly beautiful view, and so the game just naturally incentivizes you to not use fast travel all that much because you're just missing out on so much of what that world has to offer. Obviously, with a game like Starfield that takes place in an entire galaxy with over 100 systems that you can explore, it's going to be unavoidable that you're going to use fast travel. In fact, you fast travel quite a bit in this game, like more than most games, I would say. But at the same time, even with that emphasis on fast travel, and even with that limitation on how far you can physically travel on foot on each planet, it's still the most fun that I've ever had in a game with exploration ever. Like, there were times where I was kind of plowing through the main quest, getting through a side quest, and then it just popped into my head, you know what? I just want to just like travel the cosmos. Like, hey, what's that system over there? Let me just travel over there and let me just land on this moon and see what the view is like when I land there. And I would get sidetracked for hours. I mean, like 5, 6, 7, 10-hour stretches of just like flying all over the place and just sort of taking in the views. That is a remarkable thing to accomplish with a game. I think No Man's Sky did an admirable job of trying to get there, but just graphically, it just doesn't really kind of do it for me. And there's a lot of repetition in that game. It's not that there's no repetition in this game, it's just it looks so much better, and there are more interesting things to do on these planets and moons in Starfield than there are in No Man's Sky, which again, I think No Man's Sky is like a good game, but you know, like I have to say, I don't understand what the point of playing No Man's Sky is going to be after this game comes out, because this game just does almost everything better. The only thing I would say that is that works in No Man's Sky's favor over Starfield is that in that game, all you have to do is scan an object a single time and it adds it to your database. And in this game, when you want to survey a planet, it takes like 30 minutes to an hour to travel to each biome and scan every animal and plant or element or whatever. It can be kind of tedious, I have to say. I wish that they would scale that back just a little bit, but really they're just trying to get you to spend as much time on these planets as possible, take in all the scenes and vistas that you can take in, and they do it like really well. The minor tedious nature of scanning things aside, it is really fun to just get lost on a planet. Like you're walking on Mars or whatever, and then you see sort of like an abandoned mech factory. Like, oh, what am I gonna find in there? I don't know. And so you walk up and go inside, and there's like 25 spacers in there shooting at you, and there's this really good loot down there, and maybe it gives you the resources that you need to fabricate something back at your home base. And so it all connects very well. And yeah, I mean, I have to just keep emphasizing how gratifying it is to just get in your ship and just go places, and what a strength for a game like this to have. So I'm just going to repeat myself and say that I think this game is astonishing. It's just simply astonishing. It might have sounded like I was being a little hard on it to start the video, but I just wanted to get the flaws out of the way first, and I think the performance stuff is a pretty big flaw. I reserve the right to change my opinion if they come back in a month or 3 months or 6 months and add some kind of optimization patch and they really boost that performance, or they add DLSS, hopefully. That's obviously going to change the experience quite a bit. But if you can set that aside, and if you can get to a place where even if you're a performance snob like I am, you can forgive 40, 50, 60 frames, you're going to have, I think, a really magical time playing this game. It is a 10 out of 10. It's one of my favorite games in recent memory, and I think it's going to be a generationally defining game. I really believe that. I have no idea what other reviewers are going to say about this game. I have a feeling this game is going to be like 95 on Metacritic or whatever, or 9.5. I could be wrong. Maybe some people's criticisms were a lot harsher than mine, but the fact of the matter is that I've played close to, I think, 90 hours, and I'm not bored. I'm going to start a fresh run when I start streaming it when it goes live, and I'm looking forward to it. Like, knowing the things that I know now, I'm going to avoid certain mistakes, and my experience might be a little bit more streamlined. I'm going to there's less pressure to get content done, and so I'm going to talk to every NPC that I can. And this game is it's a masterpiece.